It started on a Tuesday, I think. Yeah, a Tuesday. The red line from Alewife into Boston.it was my third week at the new job, a graphic design firm near downtown Crossing, and I was still getting used to the rhythm of the commute, the stale, metallic air of the underground, the way the train cars shuddered and screamed on the curves, the press of bodies during rush hour.it was all still novel enough to be annoying, but not yet invisible. That morning I wasn't alone. Maya from accounting was on the same train that we'd gotten coffee once, and there was this unspoken tension. She was beautiful in a way that made my brain stutter sometimes. Not in a glamorous, untouchable way, but in a real, visceral way that made it hard to look directly at her for too long. That day she was wearing a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans that hugged her hips, and every time she shifted her weight as the train swayed, the fabric would pull tight across her thighs that I found myself staring at the place where her neck met her shoulder, at the little hollow there, imagining what it would feel like to press my lips against that spot. That it was a stupid, distracting thought to have at 8:15 in the morning on a packed train. We were making small talk, the kind you do when you're still figuring someone out. The weather, a stupid TV show, the nightmare of finding a decent apartment in Somerville. The train was pulling into Harvard Square, the brakes letting out that high-pitched, metallic sigh. The automated voice came over the speakers, flat and digital as always, Harvard Square. Doors open on the right. Star. But then, just as the doors were hissing open, there was a flicker in the sound, that a crackle of static, and underneath the fading echo of the official announcement, a whisper. It was so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. A trick of the tinnitus I sometimes get in my left ear. It was a soft, sibilant rush of syllables that sounded like Daniel Brewer. Star. I froze. Daniel Brewer was a name I hadn't heard or thought of in over 15 years. He was a kid from my summer camp when I was 13, a bully with a cruel streak who'd made my life hell for 8 weeks. He'd pantsed me in front of a group of girls, stolen my sneakers and thrown them in the lake, the usual petty, traumatic shit that scars you at that age. Why would that name pop into my head now, of all places, and in that specific, whispered way? You okay? Maya asked. She was looking at me, her head tilted, her lips were glossy, a pale pink, and I watched them form the words. For a second, I was more fixated on the slight pout of her lower lip than on the weirdness of the moment. Yeah, fine, I said, shaking my head as if to clear water from my ears. Just thought I heard something weird. On the T? It's a symphony of weird sounds, she said with a laugh, and the train jolted forward, causing her to bump against my arm. I could feel the warmth of her through my jacket sleeve, a brief, electric contact that made my stomach tighten. I caught a scent of her perfume, something clean like linen and a little bit like vanilla. I had to consciously stop myself from leaning in closer. Yeah, I guess, I mumbled, trying to push the name out of my head. Daniel Brewer. It was just a random memory triggered by the stress of the new job, the lack of sleep, the proximity to Maya. That had to be it. The day went on, normal, forgettable. I spent hours tweaking layouts, in pointless meetings, eating a sad salad at my desk. But the whisper lingered in the back of my mind, a splinter I couldn't quite dig out. That evening I was on the train home, alone this time. It was later, past 7, and the car was mostly empty. I was slumped in a seat, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, the day's fatigue settling deep into my bones. We were between Kendall and Central, the train rattling through the dark tunnel. The lights flickered, a common occurrence, but this time they stayed dim for a few seconds longer than usual. In that semi-darkness, the speaker above me crackled. The official voice began, approaching Central Square. And then, layered underneath it, like a ghost track, the whisper came again. Clearer this time. A woman's voice, soft but precise. Chloe Matheson. A cold knot tightened in my gut. Chloe Matheson. My first serious college girlfriend. Our breakup had been messy, brutal. I'd caught her cheating with my roommate, and the ensuing fight had been loud, ugly, full of things said that could never be taken back. She'd screamed at me that she hoped I'd never be happy. I'd told her I wished I'd never met her. It was a name associated with a specific, potent kind of hurt, a betrayal that had taken me the better part of a year to get over. This was no coincidence. 2 names, 2 people from my past who had, in their own ways, wished me genuine harm, Daniel with his adolescent cruelty, Chloe with her venomous, heartbroken fury. I sat up straight, my phone forgotten in my lap. I looked around the car. A few rows down, a man was sleeping, his head lolling against the window. A woman was reading a book, oblivious. No one else had reacted. No one else had even flinched. The train pulled into Central, the doors opened and closed. I stayed in my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was sweating despite the train's chill. What the hell was happening? Was I having some kind of psychotic break? Was this stress? I got off at my stop, Davis Square, and practically ran up the escalator to the street, gulping in the cool evening air as if I'd been drowning. The familiar sounds of Somerville, cars, students laughing, the distant clang of a streetcar, felt alien and distant. All I could hear was that whisper. Chloe Matheson, star. I called my older sister, Sarah. She's a therapist. I didn't tell her the whole story, just that I was feeling stressed, hearing things, maybe having anxiety. It's a big life change, Mark, she said, her voice calm and clinical. A new job, a new city, your brain can manifest stress in weird ways. Auditory hallucinations aren't unheard of. Try to get more sleep. Maybe cut back on the coffee. It was a logical, sane answer. I clung to it. It had to be stressed. It was the only thing that made sense. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Every time I got on the T, my shoulders were up around my ears, my entire body tense, waiting. The normal announcements became triggers. Doors opening. My breath would catch. Please mind the gap. I'd flinch. But nothing happened on Wednesday or Thursday. I started to relax, to believe my sister. It had been a one-off, a weird glitch in my own mental software. Then Friday came. Maya and I had ended up on the same train again. We'd been texting a bit, the flirty, tentative kind. She suggested we get off a stop early at Park Street and walk through the Common to the office. It was a beautiful, crisp autumn morning. The sun was out, the sky was a sharp, clean blue. For the first time all week I felt good, hopeful even. We were standing near the doors, close enough that I could see the fine golden hairs on her forearm. She was wearing a black dress today, something simple and sleeveless, and a leather jacket. The dress was cinched at the waist with a thin belt, and it flowed over her hips in a way that made my eyes want to trace the shape of them over and over. When she turned to look out the window at the dark tunnel wall, the line of her back, the curve of her spine down to the small of her back, was all I could see. I had a sudden, vivid image of sliding my hands up under that dress, feeling the warmth of her skin, and the intensity of the fantasy made me look away, guilty and aroused. The train was pulling into Park Street, the busiest station on the line. The familiar robotic voice began its spiel. Park Street. Transfer to the Green Line, doors open on the left. The crowd shifted, preparing to disembark. And then, in that moment of collective movement, the whisper came. It wasn't faint this time. It was clear, intimate, as if someone was standing right behind me, their lips almost touching my ear. Gary Heslin. The blood drained from my face. Gary Heslin. My boss at my first job out of college. A petty, miserable man who'd taken a profound dislike to me. He'd sabotaged my projects, taken credit for my work, and eventually fired me for cultural misfit. A blow that had left me unemployed and deeply in debt for 6 months. I'd spent many nights lying awake, fantasizing about the various ways his life could fall apart. The hatred had been pure and hot. "You're white as a sheet," Maya said, her hand on my arm. Her touch was like a brand. "Mark? Are you sick?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, my throat tight. The doors opened and the crowd swept us out onto the platform. The noise was overwhelming, echoing footsteps, a busker playing a sad saxophone, the roar of another train arriving. I felt dizzy, disoriented. Maya kept her hand on my arm, guiding me through the throngs of people. "Let's sit for a minute," she said, leading me to a cold, metal bench. I put my head in my hands, trying to breathe. It wasn't stressed. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real. The Boston tea was whispering the names of my enemies to me. "What is it?" Maya asked, her voice full of genuine concern. Her knee was pressed against mine. I could feel the solidity of her through my trousers. I looked at her feet, clad in stylish black ankle boots, the delicate bones of her ankles. I focused on them, trying to anchor myself in something real, something beautiful, to fight off the rising tide of panic. The announcements, I stammered, finally looking up at her. When the voice comes on, do you ever hear anything else? Like a whisper underneath? She frowned, her perfect eyebrows drawing together. A whisper? No, never, just the same robot lady. Why? What did you hear? I couldn't tell her. I couldn't say asterisk. I just heard the name of the man I used to dream about pushing in front of a train. Asterisk, she'd think I was insane, that I'd think I was insane. Nothing, I said, forcing a smile that it felt like a grimace on my face. Just tired, that didn't sleep well. She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. We walked through the common, the sunlight dappling through the turning leaves, but the beauty was lost on me. The world had tilted on its axis, that I was in a horror movie that only I could hear. That weekend was a write-off, that I barely left my apartment, that I jumped at every sound, that I kept my TV on for noise, but I couldn't focus on anything. I started making a list on a legal pad. Asterisk Daniel Brewer, Chloe Matheson, Gary Heslin. Asterisk why them? What was the connection? The answer was obvious and terrifying. They had all at one point wished me harm, and I in turn had wished it right back at them, but that was it? Just anyone who'd ever had a negative thought about me? The list would be endless. The guy I'd cut off in traffic last week. The barista I'd snapped at when my order was wrong. My third grade teacher who thought I was a disruption. The scope of it was paralyzing. On Monday, I had to go back to work. I couldn't afford to lose this job. I considered taking an Uber, but that felt like surrendering to the madness that I had to face it. I got on the red line at Davis, my body thrumming with a low-grade terror. The train car was its usual morning self. Quiet, full of people avoiding eye contact, staring at phones, sipping coffee. I found a seat and gripped the handle of my bag until my knuckles were white. The journey was a torture of anticipation. Charles MGH. Nothing. Kendall. Nothing. My stop, Downtown Crossing, was next. The train slowed, the brakes screeched, the speaker above me hummed. Asterisk, Downtown Crossing. Transfer to the orange line. Doors open on the right. Asterisk, and then the whisper. It was different this time. It wasn't a single name. It was a cascade, a soft, rushing torrent of names, spoken so fast they almost blurred together, but I could pick out individual ones. Asterisk, Mrs. Gable, Ryan Pellegrino, Jessica's friend Beth, Mr. Henderson from the bank. Asterisk, it was a roll call of every minor slight, every forgotten resentment from my entire life. The teacher who'd given me a C+. The kid who'd beat me in the 8th grade spelling bee. The loan officer who'd almost denied my first car loan. A cacophony of silent ill will, given voice. I stumbled off the train, my legs weak. I leaned against a cold tiled wall, the smell of urine and disinfectant filling my nose. I was hyperventilating. This was beyond a glitch. This was a systematic invasion. It was as if the city itself had been listening, keeping score, and had decided to read it all back to me. The horror became a routine. A twisted part of my daily life. I stopped hearing the official announcements altogether. My brain had tuned them out, waiting only for the whisper. It was always there now, on every ride. Sometimes a single, significant name from my past. Sometimes a dizzying list of near strangers. I started carrying noise-canceling headphones, but it didn't matter. The whisper wasn't coming from the speakers. I knew that now. It was coming from inside my head, triggered by the system. A key turning in a lock I never knew I had. My work suffered. I was distracted, jumpy. My boss, a kind-faced woman named Carol, pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay at home. I lied. Of course I lied. The only respite, the only thing that felt real, was Maya. Our flirtation had deepened. We went for drinks after work that Thursday. We sat in a dark, cozy booth in a bar near Faneuil Hall. In the low light, her skin seemed to glow. She was telling a story about her crazy family, laughing, and I was watching the way her throat moved when she swallowed her wine. I was watching her hands, the slender fingers wrapped around the stem of her glass. I wanted to feel those fingers on my skin. The desire was a sharp, physical ache, a welcome distraction from the constant, low hum of dread that had become my life. We took the orange line back towards our respective stops, both a little buzzed. The train was quiet, almost empty. We were sitting side by side, our thighs pressed together from shoulder to knee. The heat of her was intoxicating. I could smell the wine on her breath, mixed with her perfume that I was acutely aware of every point of contact, the pressure of her leg, the way her shoulder leaned into mine that I let my hand rest on my own thigh, my pinky finger just a fraction of an inch from hers. The sexual tension was a live wire, buzzing in the space between us, so potent it almost drowned out the fear. The train was between State and Haymarket. The lights flickered that my body went rigid, the Pavlovian response kicking in that I tried to focus on Maya, on the curve of her ear, on the tiny silver hoop earring she wore. I tried to lose myself in the fantasy of what might happen later, of her in my apartment, of that black dress pooled on my floor. The automated voice announced the next stop, and then the whisper came that it was soft, almost gentle. Maya Flores. My breath caught in my throat. No, not her. Please, not her. I turned to look at her. She was staring straight ahead, a slight, unreadable smile on her face. She hadn't heard it. Of course she hadn't. But the system had. It had spoken her name. What silent harm had Maya Flores wished me? Was it the casual, fleeting annoyance when I'd gotten the time of our coffee meetup wrong? Was it a moment of jealousy over a project assignment I'd gotten that she wanted? Or was it something else, something darker? A judgment she'd made about me that I was unaware of? A secret resentment? The whisper offered no context. It was just a statement of fact that I in the ledger of people who had, however briefly or profoundly, wished me ill. Her name was now written. The desire I'd felt for her curdled in my stomach, mixing with the paranoia that I looked at her glossy lips and wondered what curses they had silently formed against me. I looked at her hands and imagined them clenched in frustration because of something I'd done. The attraction was still there, a powerful hormonal pull, but it was now intertwined with a deep, chilling suspicion. Every laugh, every touch, every flirtatious glance. Was it real? Or was it a mask? The whisper had poisoned the one good thing I had left. I pulled away slightly, breaking the contact of our legs. You okay? She asked, turning to me. Her eyes were warm, concerned. Yeah, I said, my voice hoarse. Just a lot on my mind. The rest of the ride was silent. The magic of the evening was gone, shattered by two whispered words. When we got off at our stop, the goodnight kiss I'd been dreaming of all week felt like an impossibility. I gave her a